And we are live today. Mike Fiddle and I will be breaking down the weekend schedule, having a look at some stream targets, changing it up a little bit from our regular format. This is going to be fun. This is Fantasy Basketball International. This is Balls Deep.
I hear something.
It's coming from below.
I think you've become mad.
Almost as if something is moving below us.
Act a little peculiar and you're an outsider. Perhaps you've always been mad.
We nerve this program to bring you a live broadcast from the once defunct but now resurrected lost arts.
Don't you feel it?
Brigham.
Welcome to the Balls Deep podcast, part of the Fantasy Basketball International podcast network. I am your host, Adam King, at AdamKing91 on Twitter, joined, as always, by Michael Fiddle, at Fiddle's Picks on Twitter. Normally we're doing this, we're recording it. This is the usual time that we record it, but we look at the week ahead. We thought we'd go live today, change it up, and have a look at the weekend schedule. So starting with tonight's games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then including Monday as well, because that is often a good way of picking up an extra game for the upcoming matchup. Mike, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. You told me we were going live. I promised I would be in a suit and tie. Unfortunately, didn't get to the dry cleaners this morning, so I couldn't bring the suit, so I apologize.
No, I don't even own a suit. I don't think. Oh, no, maybe I do. It's somewhere in a cupboard. I never wear it. I don't have to wear those sorts of clothes for work, so that's good. So T-shirts it is, which is formal enough, I think.
Just talking fantasy basketball. Should we be in jerseys?
We could be in jerseys. Maybe next week we'll pull out a jersey. We'll collaborate and come up with some sort of a theme. I don't know how many jerseys I've got. Maybe I've got 25, 30. I'm not sure. I've got a few. So
I definitely don't have enough, but that would be a fun concept to do.
All right, well, let's aim for next week. We'll come up with an idea for that. All right, so as I said, we're going to have a look at the stream targets starting with tonight's game. So we want to get going because games tip off in about 90 minutes or so. So the schedule in terms of high volume, low volume, it's pretty balanced for the next 4 days. We've got 8 games tonight, 8 games tomorrow, 6 games on Sunday and 8 games on Monday. So no real high volume, low volume days. So there's likely you'll be able to stream most of those days. There maybe on the 8 game nights you might have a full roster, but I know for me, for instance, I don't think any of my rosters are full tonight. I think I've got at least one empty roster spot that I can stream into. 3 and 4, so teams that have 3 games in 4 nights. As I said, including Monday, we've got Atlanta, Boston, Charlotte, Orlando, Philly, Phoenix, and San Antonio. And then teams on the flip side that have only 1 game in the next 4 days. So teams that you probably don't need to be paying too much attention to in terms of streaming: Dallas, Golden State, New Orleans, New York, Oklahoma, Sacramento, and Utah. And I've popped an asterisk there next to the Warriors because we're actually not sure what their schedule looks like now for the next few days. Their game 2 days ago against Utah was postponed. Tonight against Dallas, I think, is postponed. We'll see. It's sort of an open-ended situation at the moment. So, yeah, bit tricky to stream anyone from the Warriors. Anything to add before we move into players and who we're targeting?
No, I just think it's worth discussion that next week, as we get further into the week, I know we're looking this weekend into the turn of the week, into the start of next week, week 14. But if we look towards like the entirety of week 14, there's really only one high volume day, and it's Saturday with 10 games. So if you're attacking a waiver wire and doing smart pickups like a 3 games in 4 that scoops up a Monday, Tuesday, you're going to get an advantage going in through the rest of the week. It's a pretty low volume week next week in general. So targeting an early week waiver wire or a weekend pickup that correlates with an early week game is a very smart idea.
All right. Very good. Let's move to the first slide, looking at the teams. So these are the teams that have 3 games in 4 nights, as I alluded to earlier. Now, we had trouble coming up with players from Atlanta to stream in, but Trae Young has been ruled out tonight with an illness. a lot of players seem to have illness, some sort of illness, whether it's the same thing and it's just sweeping through the league. I'm not sure, but I know Anthony Simons is also questionable tonight with, I feel like he was sick like 2 weeks ago and missed a few games because he was sick. So, yeah, interesting situation with all the illness going around. But I've just thrown in some of their guards here, Garrison Matthews, Kobe Buffkin, Trent Forrest. I couldn't promise that any of these guys are going to play big minutes. Bogdanovic probably gets a bump because Trey's not there, so he'll do more. DeJounte Murray gets a bump, obviously, because he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more, which I'm happy with because I have him in a league where I need stats today from him. And obviously with some trade rumors floating around, they're just a team to watch over the next 1 to 2 weeks as we get closer to the trade deadline. I think I saw rumors this morning that DeJounte is a possible target for Milwaukee as well. They've sort of joined that queue of teams who are interested in him. Thoughts on the Murray trade? This seems like it's probably going to happen at some point.
Yeah, he just posted on his Instagram story a picture of the Miami Heat rafters and all the retired jerseys in Miami. I don't know what to make of it, but that's abnormal for an Atlanta Hawks player to do that. So I think look for DeJounte Murray to be traded. And the main reason why we were talking before we got on and went live is to put Buffkin or Forrest or throw in Patty Mills or Garrison Matthews. The reason why we're targeting maybe some Atlanta Hawks guards and use tonight as a good microcosm to diagnose the way that this might go. See who plays in Trae Young's absence to know who might replace in DeJounte Murray's absence. Of course, it will depend on the returning pieces, but it looks closer and closer like the DeJounte Murray trade is going to happen. Definitely, he seems willing for it. It definitely seems like other teams want it. It's just a matter of, is Atlanta Hawks going to kind of eat the dead weight of that trade that they previously made? Adam, the Hawks still haven't given a single one of the picks to the Spurs for that trade yet. Like, they still owe 2 first-round picks unprotected and a swap in between. Like, it is terrible. So they are going to have to swallow some just dead picks and to get off of it, try and recoup whatever they can get back. But look for Patty Mills, Forrest Matthews. I quickly did something really smart. I jumped on a DFS optimizer because I sneakily have access to those things. And I plugged in tonight's game to see who they thought was going to get the biggest bump with Trae Young's absence. And it's of the players that are probably not owned or potentially not owned. Sadiq Bey gets the biggest bump. He's probably rostered. He's probably on that bubble where maybe in a shallow league he's not rostered, or maybe he's on a waiver because he's been dropped recently. Good schedule and the trade pending possibilities. Sadiq Bey should definitely be owned. The guard that they gave the biggest boost was Patty Mills from a DFS perspective. So if he's going to be the guy to replace some stats, then maybe Quinn Snyder, who maybe overlapped in the Spurs with Patty Mills years ago, might rely on him.
Yeah, he could. I think there was an instance earlier in the season, now that you bring that up, where Mills played meaningful minutes when one of these guys was out. It was probably Trae Young, but that's interesting about the Miami Instagram post with the and I was, as you mentioned it, I was thinking in my head, who might come back? Is he a good fit? And I think they do need a point guard because Kyle Lowry is not it anymore. So Tyler Hero, I suppose, is the name that comes to mind as someone that might come back. And if he did, I don't know. If he did, I think he'd be really nice alongside Trae Young. But I don't know. Who do you think might come back?
I think Miami would want to keep Hero. I think it would
I would think so, yeah.
100% Lowry's in the deal for contract purposes. It's probably picks based because of the picks that Atlanta has already shed. So you'd have to think it's got to be Lowry, picks, and then are you accruing one good young guy? Like Hawkes is not going to be touched, but is it Haywood Highsmith? Is it? I mean, I feel like Atlanta's already deep with those random fours that could just slide in and out, whether it's Okongwu or Jalen Johnson or Bay or AJ Griffin, who doesn't even get minutes. So I don't know. It'd be a hard package to consider, but look for Miami to get in the sweepstakes too, whether that's Milwaukee, the Lakers. I hear Brooklyn Nets are on the phone for DeJounte Murray, and now Miami. So let's see where this ends up.
Yeah, we might have more to talk about next week. We'll see.
Yeah.
That Siakam trade went down pretty quickly from when we sort of heard the rumors of him to Indiana. It happened within about 24 hours. So we'll see. On to Boston. Now, they have a back-to-back, obviously. If you've got 3 games in 4 nights, you're going to have a back-to-back there somewhere. So Horford will sit one of those games. But I've popped him on this list just because there's a chance that Porzingis also sits one of those games, given he's still got that the sort of the calf thing and they want to manage him a little bit. So there's a chance Horford starts one of those games in the back-to-back, and he can sort of do enough sometimes when they're healthy. Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and Luke Cornett, because he will probably step in and play backup center minutes when Horford is out, and maybe they rest them both on the same night. Who knows? It's a little hard to project, but they're my Boston guys. Anyone else for you from Boston?
Usual suspects here. Boston has a back-to-back. That means Al Horford does not have a back-to-back. And then pick your poison with what do you need. You need rebounds and blocks and field goal percentage, you go Cornett. You need as many points as possible, you go Pritchard. You need threes, you go Hauser. So being towards the weekend, you should know what categories you need to target, and you should be able to choose from those guys. The 3 games in 4 makes it valuable.
It does. Same for Charlotte. Now, I've popped Nick Richards on here, but I'm assuming he's rostered. But I feel like, having listened to some podcasts over the last few days, the percentage of teams he's rostered on is actually a lot lower than you'd think. So if for some reason he's available, because the language coming out of Charlotte regarding Mark Williams is not good. We've spoken about this previously. You are familiar with back injuries and how tricky they can be. And they've basically said that Williams isn't returning anytime soon. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that situation? Like, is there a chance Williams is done for the season?
Have you seen the Hornets record?
I have.
seven wins. And I would say there's got to be a chance. We don't have a strong upcoming draft, but there is literally no reason for the Hornets to bring back someone who they think could be part of their future if he's got back problems that could linger. I mean, we've seen this quite a few times in the NBA. It seems like a good example of overcoming them is Michael Porter Jr., knock on wood. He's been playing well. They're tricky. So, Nick Richards should be owned. He's also a sneaky trade candidate. So I think a trade could really ruin his value. But if a contending team needs a rebounding and rim running big, he might be someone that they look at. I've heard his name in those rumors too.
PJ Washington, who came back from injury recently himself and hasn't been great. He could be floating around, someone worth looking at. And then I've popped in Martin there as well. And that's Cody Martin. I'm right there, aren't I? I always get them wrong. Cody Martin, who, look, he'll get you some defensive stuff. He plays decent minutes. He's not super appealing, but if you just need to fill a roster spot, I think he's worth considering. Orlando, quite a lot of streaming value here. Now, I've led the list
Wait, Adam, I got to interrupt.
Yep.
Brandon Miller ruled in for tonight's game, 3 games in 4 days. Charlotte banged up. I think Gordon Hayward's out. Trade rumors swirling around a guy like Terry Rozier. Is Brandon Miller a potential pickup and stash for the rest of the season?
Yeah, look, if he's available, he was probably rostered in a lot of leagues before his injury, and then he was dropped.
He's available in mine, which is why I'm wondering.
Yeah, so if he's available, certainly, why not? I mean, as you said, their roster, their standings, like where they sit in the standings, is terrible. They're not winning games. They want to see what he can do, so they'll roll him out there.
Jackson or Brandon Miller?
Brandon Miller, I think. I just think his floor is safer. We saw yesterday that GG Jackson sort of bottomed out after that career best performance. He was then the other end of the spectrum in the next game, where I think Brandon Miller is a little bit safer. I think the minutes are there if he's healthy. He can sort of do what he wants. He's free to run wild. Orlando, now I've put Markel Fultz, if he's available, now this is a guy that I've been pretty high on all season, and I kept him in my IR spot despite the lack of communication from Orlando, and he came back and he wasn't great, but he played 30 minutes in their last game. He closed the game. I think they want to get him back into the starting lineup. I'm not sure whether have they announced their starting lineup. Okay, so he's not starting tonight, but I still think I'd probably consider him must roster, but I'm I'm probably more on that side where I like Fultz. I want him to be rostered. Would you consider him must roster, or are we still sort of just waiting a little bit to see what his role looks like?
I don't think he's must roster because besides Franz, the rest of this team suddenly just got healthy again. So they're it's kind of like the Mavericks, like we talked about last week. They're all going to eat at each other's usage and output. So like Cole Anthony is playing, Suggs playing, Anthony Black is going to get some minutes too. Wendell Carter Jr. is back. That's going to eat a lot of the points usage and take away from the scoring punch of a guard. Fultz should play well with those units, but how big is his opportunity share? It's probably not going to be that high, especially once Franz comes back and they get the full team healthy. So I think he's a good stream candidate for 3 and 4. He's probably out there because he's been frustrating for the people that have been holding on to him for a while. I don't think he's must roster.
And then you've mentioned a couple of these names that I've got here: Wendell Carter, Cole Anthony, Joe Ingles, Goga Bitadze, and Caleb Houston. And yeah, look, the center rotation's been a little bit weird the last few games. Bitadze is still starting. Wagner was out of the rotation. Carter has looked better. He's had a couple of productive games offensively, at least. Cole Anthony is sort of up and down. We know who he is. Joe Ingles will get you some assists and threes. Houston will get you threes. So as you said, they're all sort of just getting healthy at the same time. And so we don't know what their rotation is going to look like. If you had to, not counting Fultz, because we've sort of chatted about him, but if you're looking at those 5 other names or anyone else that you might think, would there be a preference there for you in terms of hierarchy of who we're targeting?
Cole Anthony, he's going to have the most consistent output. Again, it's what do you need? If you need this, you're going to go Fultz or even Ingles. If you need assists, but your guard spots are full. So even make sure to look at your roster, right? Who do you have in these games? Is your guard spots going to be full one day? Probably not, because we only have 6 and 8 volume games. But then go over to Joe Ingles so you can get assists from a forward position. I do think, Adam, the reason why Orlando has been doing these wonky big rotations is for one simple reason. Goga Bitadze has to be another person that they're trying to up the trade value for and send him to who needs a rim protector, who needs a rebounder. Could the Knicks look to upgrade and use a Bitadze behind a Hartenstein because they're without Mitchell Robinson? And Precious Achua hasn't been, filling that role great. Could the Clippers look for one more big behind Zubac, and because Tice is overperforming and Plumlee is just getting back, could they look for one more? Is it the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are a little over-reliant on Chet Holmgren at the 5 and could use a Goga Bitadze to just bring some size off the bench in case there's foul trouble or in case it's a matchup preference, in case you go against, the Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns combo? So look for Goga to actually be shipped out, and then that might be a reason to talk about Orlando again and sneaking up some more value. But for now, it's kind of a wasteland.
Yeah, and I do think that's interesting and about the Thunder that you talk their need for a backup center, because they really don't have one at the moment, not a reliable one. They've got the other Jalen Williams who can play center, but yeah, someone like a Bitadze would just take some of that pressure off Chet. And I think we've seen in the last 2-3 weeks, Chet has scaled back his production a little bit. He's still been really good, top 60, I think, from memory over the last couple of weeks. But just watching him on the court, I watched their game yesterday, I think it was, and he's looking a little bit passive offensively. There were a few moments there where it looked like he had the shot and he passed it off. So I don't know whether that's a little bit of a confidence thing. He's not hitting his threes at the same rate. Obviously, he's got a lot of talent around him. Jalen Williams is supposedly the best shooter in the world now. So, yeah, I think a backup center in Oklahoma would be a really smart move, given they want to go deep into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I think we talk about rookie wall. And for a guy like Chet, who had a season off, who played in college when you're playing 35 games, more spaced out, who is asked to be a 5-man in the West with the presence around him. The question for OKC isn't do they need a big, it's do they need a starting caliber big to pair next to Chet, or do they just need a backup? Do they go for a guy like Jared Allen or Clint Capella and try and kind of swing bigger, or do they just be okay with a Goga Bitadze and a Daniel Tice or Plumlee type of role? I'd like to see them go the Bitadze route, and I think he's available, but we can move on.
Yeah, I do. And I think, yeah, we will move on. But I do think, like, Bitadze has shown over the last month, 6 weeks, that he can run with the starters. He's not a difference maker as such, but he's solid enough. He's a good rim protector, so you could theoretically play Chet alongside him. Onto Philly. There's never a lot when they're healthy. There's not a lot of streaming value. I've popped in Kelly Oubre if he's available and you need points. Pat Beverly for some defensive stuff, and Batum really just if you need to fill a center spot, if you're in a 2-center league or something like that. He can get you some threes and some steals. His upside is pretty limited at this point. Anyone else in Philly?
Paul Reed when the random Embiid games misses, but he doesn't even really miss games. I'm looking at their injury report now. No. I mean, if maybe Melton when he comes back.
Yeah.
Nothing too interesting with Philly.
Much the same for Phoenix at the moment, actually, because they're healthy. Eric Gordon, who's on this list every week, Josh Okogie and Chimezie Metu. I would have had
Grayson Allen.
No, I'm not. Yeah, Grayson Allen. He's rostered. Surely he's rostered. He's got to be.
Yeah, he graduated. We send him warm wishes. I check in with him every few weeks. I say, hey, me and Adam are doing the show. We're very happy for you. We're not mentioning you as a waiver wire candidate. We are still talking about your friend Eric. We hope one day he joins you. But congratulations on your graduation, Grayson Allen.
Yes, it was Drew Eubanks who I was thinking of there. So he was their backup center, but they're going with different options now. Chimezie Metu has been pretty good, playing that role at times. So yeah, of these three, Gordon is the obvious one. If you just need some points and threes, he can go off. Josh Okogie if you need defensive stuff. Not a lot else in Phoenix, I don't think. Now we're not really talking about the Pacers, but I've just seen Woj has just tweeted that Halliburton and Siakam are both playing tonight. So pretty incredible
as we speak. Adam, thank you for the note.
Pretty incredible given how serious that injury looked to Tyrese Halliburton. We thought he might have been done for the year. We'll talk about the Pacers shortly because I've got a few Pacers guys on the next slide that I want to chat about. So we'll just go on to the Spurs quickly. Now, Zach Collins is probable for tonight with a view to him then not playing tomorrow. Wembanyama is out tonight, but he will play tomorrow. So I don't know whether this is a pattern that's going to form here with back-to-backs where they're going to rest one of them and play the other one for the foreseeable future. But Zach Collins was probably dropped in a lot of leagues. So I'd certainly be looking at him tonight if he's cleared to play and Wemby's not playing. Even if he only plays 22, 23 minutes, he should be able to do enough to have value. I've popped in Champagny, Osman and Branham, who are all pretty low on the pecking order in terms of streaming. Collins would be the intriguing one for me there. Thoughts on San Antonio?
I think Collins is worth scooping back up. I think if he was dropped, go grab him. We know Wemby's not going to play back-to-backs. Are these that we're still on the 3 games in 4 days? So one of this is going to be a back-to-back in some regard in here. So you're going to have a Wemby absence coming. It says he's going to start on Friday tonight. So I think he's a candidate right now to pick up and get him in. And I think he was sold too low. I think everyone was too out on him being a drop guy when he started getting a little less minutes. I think he's not going to get as much run next to Wembanyama, but he's back in the starting rotation, so we need to take advantage of that. He could completely fill a box score, kind of like a Kelly Olynyk, but he's getting more opportunity. Big fan of Zach Collins right now. In fact, Adam, I have him on my IL Plus, and I could drop somebody to activate him. You can drop Vince Williams, right?
No, I don't think so.
What about Neesmith?
I wouldn't, just because I think with Siakam there now, Neesmith needs to be playing decent minutes for his defensive ability. So I probably wouldn't. But maybe that I'd consider that one. Whereas Williams, I think you need to hold on to.
All right, let me ask you a philosophical question. Should players on the Mavericks and the Warriors be eligible for IL Plus because of the postponement of the game? Because that's my reason I can't move Kyrie into IL Plus.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say yes. IL Plus, I don't know. IL Plus, I think they should be. I'm just having a look at whether they can be in. So they can't be even in Fantrax, and Fantrax are pretty liberal with their sort of the options of who you can move into their IR spot. It's generally if there's any word of an injury or an absence, you can.
Right.
But it doesn't look like
decisions you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. Let's talk to Dan Titus and see. He's the Yahoo man. Tell him that he needs to pull some strings and make it so that we can move these guys in.
Listen, I know Dan listens to this show twice, once in full speed, once in half speed, so he really gets everything. So I'm sure he'll hear it.
Yeah, I'll message him after and tell him to listen in. All right, weekend stream targets. So this is players based on categories. I thought this might be something we could look at a little bit different from what we usually do as well. And these are just if you're chasing certain categories this weekend or over the next 4 days. I haven't included players that only have one game. So all of these players have 2 or 3 games. There's some doubling up, players that we've talked about already. Starting with points, I've gone with Alec Burks, Benedict Mathurin, Wendell Carter, Marvin Bagley. God, here we are, Marvin Bagley, and Norm Powell if he's available. We chatted about Carter, Alec Burks. I mean, it's been the same story for years with Alec Burks. You stream him in, you get some points, he goes cold, you drop him. Interested to get your take on Marvin Bagley because he was pretty good yesterday in his Wizards debut. Gafford is out with a concussion. Am I right in putting Bagley on this list? It feels yuck, but I think I'm right.
Let me answer your question with a question. It's like, would you say the same about like Patrick Williams when he has one randomly really good game? Or it's. I feel like we've seen this show before. It's just a matter of do we want to fall for it again? Someone called me yesterday and goes, Marvin Bagley looks like the Wizards' third best player. And he's like, I don't know if that's good for him or bad for the Wizards or what to make of it, but he looks like their legitimate third option. And I said, who's their first and second? So maybe from stat sets, he could put up stats in fantasy. There's always good stats, bad team guys. If he's going to get this minute share while Gafford's out, 39 minutes, is that just because he's playing really well that game, or is it because he's got that opportunity? Anyone in the NBA who's getting 39 minutes, especially at a big position where you could just gobble up rebounds and dunk the ball, should easily be owned in fantasy. Of course, 3 turnovers, 0 for 5 from the free throw line. So he is going to sink you in some other ways. Kind of a sneaky good points league guy.
Yep. Yeah. That's he is built for points leagues, much like an RJ Barrett. A lot of guys on this list, Alec Burks. Yeah. So some options there if you do need some points. Looking at assists, Dennis Smith Jr. This is where I wanted to talk about the paces. Dennis Smith Jr., Spencer Dinwiddie, who their minutes seem to be going back and forth a little bit. Dinwiddie had sort of moved or seemed to have fallen out of favour a little bit, but then in the last game, he played well. So it does appear as though this is going to be reliant on how well Dinwiddie is playing. If he's playing well, they're going to use him, close with him. If he's struggling, they're okay to sort of bring in Dennis Smith Jr. and let him play that role and close the games. So both can have value for assists. Luke Kennard, who's potentially rostered in a lot of leagues now, but if he's available, you're more picking him up for points and threes. But he started at point guard in their last game, and he has flashed a little bit of playmaking upside in the past when he was in Detroit, especially earlier in his career. Ayo Dosunmu, I've popped in here as well. Levine, I don't know. He did something yesterday. I wasn't watching the Bulls game. I know that he had an injury. If it sticks, if it hangs around, maybe Dosunmu. And then TJ McConnell, who obviously went off yesterday, had 20 and 10. And with Halliburton back, I think people are just going to go, okay, McConnell's done, drop him, grab someone else. But before you go and do that, Andrew Nembhard is out again tonight. And he's out with, you might be able to explain what this is, thoracic spine sprain, which to me sounds bad. Like, it doesn't sound like a good injury. But if Nembhard is going to miss time here, McConnell is going to play the backup and could get 20 minutes. I mean, you can play him alongside Halliburton. They're going to ease Halliburton in, I would assume. He's not going to come out and play 34 minutes right away. So I think McConnell could have a little bit of value, especially for streaming purposes, even beyond this week.
Halliburton's also coming off of a hamstring injury, which if anyone watches NFL football, that's the most recurring muscle injury you could possibly ask for. So to jump the gun on dropping McConnell, probably not a smart idea. He's playing in a few hours. He's probably going to be on a minutes restriction coming off a soft tissue injury. It's something that could easily come back. So don't drop TJ yet. Let it get a few games before you get some stat set and some Halliburton at full minutes to really consider. There's a lot of ways I could go about responding to this, Adam. Dennis Smith Jr. versus Dinwiddie. I think Dinwiddie's also very much on the trade block. I think that Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith combo, very eligible for teams to come in and swoop. Very good contracts to match. So whether that's the DeJounte Murray going to Atlanta and DeJounte comes back to Brooklyn, maybe Dennis Smith starts getting more time. DSJ is a sneaky pickup ahead of trade rumors. Luke Kennard, I feel like I got to pat myself on the back, which I would be patting myself on the thoracic spine if I pat myself on the back. And because I've been touting the Luke Kennard, Luke is the perfect fit for this team. Now, did I think it was going to come all the way in January once the rest of the team was absolutely gone and he was just simply the only man left? No. But I've been saying Luke Kennard on like 20 straight podcasts with you. And it's finally here. He's got a very Joe Ingles type of vibe. He can do it all. He's efficient, threes, points, assists, and minutes. His minutes aren't going anywhere. I don't think he's going to be traded. A lot of people think contenders are going to come and try and swoop up Luke Kennard. I think the Grizzlies want to keep him around for next year because he's such a perfect fit, going back to what we've been saying the last few weeks. So Kennard's a rest of the season guy. Easily.
He is. I even drafted him in a couple of leagues with my last pick because...
And you held him?
I didn't hold him, but I managed to pick him up again. So, because he got the injury and I think he came into the season injured. And anyway, I picked him up in two or three leagues. He's coming off, I think he had 18 points yesterday, 1 or 2 steals, couple of assists. And as you said, I think teams might try to get him, but the Grizzlies bought him in last season and he was, as you said, a perfect fit alongside Ja Morant. So they want to see what this team looks like healthy, which isn't going to happen till next season. So I think they're going to hold onto Kennard if they can. Now, I just Googled thoracic spine sprain.
I can do that too.
I'll read what it says. It's caused when ligaments are torn from their attachments. Both of these can result from a sudden injury or from gradual overuse. I don't remember there being a specific time when this happened in a game. It seemed to just pop up out of nowhere. So to me, it feels like this is more of a gradual overuse injury. But when I look at how long does this take to heal, it really doesn't clear things up because it says 4 to 16 weeks. So are we looking at a 10-game absence or are we looking at potentially the rest of the season? We haven't really heard, but I don't know if you have any thoughts or input on that.
It shouldn't be a rest of the season type of injury. Of course, I had a thoracic spine surgery, which took a 2-year recovery. So I think it'd be multiple seasons in that case. However, the thoracic spine, it's below your neck, above your lumbar, that area where your rib cage connects. So these ligaments could be either in between the bones of the thoracic spine, or they could be kind of in the intercostals, which is between the spine connecting to the ribs, meaning it would kind of hurt to breathe and twist and move. All these explosive movements, any type of spine extension where you're leaning backwards, that is going to cause pain. So yeah, I might be a fantasy basketball and gambling expert, but I did do some college anatomy, so I know what I'm talking about here.
And to me, like when they released their injury report or updated a couple of hours ago, obviously since then we've had more updates, but Obi Toppin was questionable, Mathurin was questionable, Neesmith was questionable, Halliburton was questionable, Nembhard was out. He was just ruled out. So, to me, I think McConnell, I'm going to be holding him. I've got him in a couple of leagues and I'm just going to hold him until he bottoms out because even in 18 to 20 minutes, he can get you 6 or 7 assists and 2 steals, and that's why you picked him up.
And doesn't hurt you anywhere. And then last thing, Pacers related, since you told me their guys were ruled in and because I track these gambling lines all the time, how many points do you think the line shifted from thinking they might play to they are definitely playing? The combination of Siakam and Halliburton.
You mean the total, like for the game?
No, like I'm thinking more spread. So like the Pacers were 5.5 point favorites.
Okay.
In Portland. They're on the road in Portland before the news came out. And then you told me the news and the line moved. So now they are how many point favorites?
I don't know. 12.
8.5.
8.5. Okay.
They said the combination of Halliburton and Siakam going from potentially playing to definitely playing was worth 3 points, which is pretty significant.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Shows my knowledge around betting because I have no idea.
This is the world that I live in.
It is. It is. Onto rebounds. I've put in Mason Plumlee, another guy that may have been added in a lot of leagues, given what we saw in their last game. Goga Bitadze, we've talked about him. Andre Drummond, he's always going to be on this list for rebounds. I've left Duop Reith there. I'm pretty sure Ayton is playing tonight. He's made it through his little snow-related mishap. So he will be playing. So obviously Reith takes a big hit. He moves back to the bench. But I don't know. I'd probably just hold him for at least one game, maybe two, because Ayton is certainly no picture of health. He tends to, I don't know, he finds ways to get injured or not play. I don't know how motivated he is. So I'd just hold Reith and just see. And then Xavier Tillman, who I've put in here, but I think much like Luke Kennard, I think Tillman has probably been picked up in the majority of competitive leagues now.
Yeah. I think you're holding on to Reith because he's Australian, but
maybe I am. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, he could play 9 minutes tonight and do absolutely nothing, but
it's like when I won that big bet on the Suns and then decided to roster Chimezie Metu for a week after it.
Yeah,
I owed it to him.
Yeah. Steals, TJ McConnell, we talked about him. Chris Dunn, steals specialist. Xavier Tillman, who's a nice, sneaky steals specialist from the center position. You could almost have him in the assists one here as well. I've got him in blocks. He had 6 assists, I think, yesterday. So basically anything but points. You're streaming in Tillman or adding Tillman. Larry Nance, another center who can get you steals. And then I've put Martin, and this could be either Martin, Caleb or Cody. They're both good on the defensive end and can get you a couple of steals. Anything to add on the steals specialists?
I saw Tybalt was dropped in my league, so I think if he's available, then you could try and go after him. He plays tonight and Sunday, so 2 of the next 3, and Tuesday. There's no Monday, Tuesday back-to-backs next week, everybody. So anyone that you're targeting for, 2 games this weekend, as long as they play once Monday or Tuesday, you should be fine. So Matisse Thybulle could be a guy. Yeah, I mean, there's we talked about this last week, Adam. There's some good steals specialists this year.
There are, yeah.
Tyson Daniels. You could go back to the Markelle Fultz thing if he's still out there.
Yeah, Fultz is a steals guy. And then on to blocks, Goga Bitadze, we talked about him. Tillman, talked about him. Drummond, I don't know. I popped him on this list. He's not, and you could, I guess you could have Plumlee on this list as well, but neither are sort of high volume blocks guys, despite the fact that they're massive. They don't get a lot of blocks, but they can luck into blocks. Plumlee had 3 blocks in his last game. He'll probably have none for the next week. But Drummond can do the same thing. He can randomly go off and have 3 blocks and 2 steals, even in 15 minutes. Derek Jones, he's pretty good at those defensive stats, blocks and steals as well. And Chris Dunn, sneaky blocks from the guard position. He'll get you close to a block a game. Anyone else for blocks that I've missed here?
No, I think that's a good list. I could quickly search in my league who's eligible, but maybe Plumlee's available.
Yeah.
Because we put him in the rebounds category. No, I think you got it. And Isaac, maybe.
I think that's it. Maybe, well, yeah. And I mean, there were a few names that I haven't put on this list because they only play 1 game. So there's some Warriors guys that you could look at, but they don't have we don't know what their schedule looks like at the moment.
Maybe I would Fournette because of the 3 games in 4 days for Boston, and then Horford not playing back-to-back. So Fournette would be one we could add. But I think those guys would be my preferred options too.
Yep. That's the end of my slides. We got through that pretty well. I guess you're the betting schedule DFS guy here. Anything that I've missed, anything we haven't touched on yet that you think is worthwhile discussing?
No. I was thinking about, very off topic. All right. I was thinking about doing like play breakdowns. You think people would be interested in like seeing the actual breakdown of a play and understanding what's going on from a basketball context?
They might. I would. I love that stuff. Can
I walk you through one of them and it take me like 2 or 3 minutes, a recent play from this week, and then I can share my screen?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, give me 1 second to pull it up. But I think of the play that I wanted to talk about was Anthony Simons' game winner against the Brooklyn Nets the other day. I thought there was a lot of cool basketball tactical things that were going on in that play. And I feel like it would be cool to break it down and understand. So I'm going to pull up the replay of that play. It's like a 25-second clip. And I want to explain the few things that are happening on it. Hold on one second. Sorry, I will turn off the volume there. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see? You can see this. You can see the play, right?
Yep.
All right. So go over here. I just need to be able to see it a little bit better. So, guys, if you're listening, if you're watching, let me know if you're interested in these kind of videos, and I can certainly do more of them and understand kind of the X's and O's and tactically what's going on with some of these plays. We have the Portland Trailblazers and Brooklyn Nets tied the other night as Brogdon inbounds the ball. And Adam, the first thing I want to point out is the action that's going to happen right here. It's going to be between my guy, Toumani Camara, who we often talk about on the show, and Anthony Simons. And what he's going to do, I will drag it up so we can see it slowly. What he's going to do is he's going to come set a high screen and try and create space. Now, the first thing that this is going to do is force Brooklyn to make the first decision. Now, what's going to happen? What are the 3 options from this inbound low post screen? First is that they are trying to get Cam Johnson right here to switch on to Anthony Simons. Ideally, the Portland Trailblazers want to pull Mikal Bridges away as the primary defender, and they would prefer to ISO against Cam Johnson. So they're going to try and get them to switch or force Brooklyn to fight over the screen. So those are the two options. The third option on this play would be, say Cam Johnson and Bridges have a slight miscommunication and they both start following Simons out as Simons comes out here. If they both start following him, then Brogdon has an easy pass right here to Kamara for the dunk. So there's three options on this play. Are you going to switch? Are you going to fight through? Or is there potentially going to be a blown coverage? So then we start to see it play out and they bump into each other, but ultimately Bridges is able to fight through and get to where he is. So even though the Nets were forced to make a decision, they get the right decision here and they make the play. Now let's go back and see one more thing that's going on here. Right as this screen starts to be set, we see Jeremy Grant over here in the corner who's got Nicholas Claxton on him. Now, if you watch Brooklyn Nets basketball, you know Claxton is their center, their rim protector, their rebounder. So in a play like this, Adam, we are going to try and pull Claxton away from the rim. So what is Grant going to do? He's going to come out here on this three-point line, be as far from the rim as possible. And then as the action starts to come towards him, he's going to do what's called a Duke cut, which is going down baseline and then to the opposing three-point line. So he's going to come around, and we're watching Jeremy Grant here in the corner, and that gets Claxton to start to pull to the other side as Simons comes over. You see where I'm saying this? Following me? Okay. So what's really going on here is as soon as Jeremy Grant starts to cross here and get to the other side, this should now become Cam Johnson's responsibility right here to be the closeout guy on both of these. And Claxton should retreat back and be able to rim protect. Because of the time in the situation, we have 3.8 seconds. If Simons is going to pass the ball, it's going to have to be a catch and shoot. And because of that, Cam Johnson is going to be able to close out on either one. There's not going to be a multi-action here because we have 14 seconds left on the shot clock. So we need to have some situational awareness of what's going on. So Claxton gets a step lost right there. So we have this action where Jeremy Grant runs the Duke cut, goes from one three-point line to the other, and Claxton gets a little bit too deep. Now, last thing we got going on here, Adam, is Mikal Bridges at the top of the key. And you see him start to wave his arms. He is calling for help. He's calling for help, right? We see that? He starts waving that arm. Come help me. And then he's going to play Simons to his left hand, his weak hand, while he asks for help defense to come in. But meanwhile, Claxton is getting a little bit buried too deep. Cam Johnson thinks he's responsible for these shooters. And ultimately, Dinwiddie is going to start making the help motion that Bridges calls for. Dinwiddie doesn't have the best cutting angle. Cam Johnson knows that his responsibility now becomes to either step up, since Dinwiddie's the one to help. Cam Johnson's going to have to step up to watch out for Brogdon. It's going to cause Claxton to have to be aware of these guys, and they're all going to get caught too deep and leave this space a little open. Simons is able to work through, and Claxton realizes right now, oh no, I was one step too deep, and the teardrop is able to get up right over him and in for the win. You could see Bridges catch the ball after, immediately look around like, damn, my help defense was nowhere to be found. So if we start to see it all happen together, just a few seconds in the NBA world, but that could be an eternity when smart coaches like Chauncey Billups are drawing up plays like these, where you will see the inbound screen, the Duke cut by Jeremy Grant on the side, ultimately Bridges calling for help, the defense collapsing, and Simons getting the shot off for the win. Now, I was thinking about doing some more stuff like that. I don't know if people find it interesting. I personally love it. And I cashed a nice under on that game.
Yeah. Look,
overtime, I was able to win my bet.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. We don't get to talk about that enough in fantasy. And it's not really relevant to fantasy because we're just looking at stats purely. But, I mean, it's relevant in the background because obviously you've got key players. And if you watch that, where you started talking about the screen and what's the defense going to do, and they did get a little bit confused. As you said, they sort of bumped into each other. Bridges managed to fight over that screen, but was it Tamani Kamara he was pretty open there for like a good few seconds at the start for sort of a mid-range. He could have had a mid-range shot, but they didn't even really look at him. So if you look after there.
Right there. Yep. If Brogdon whips that pass right as Johnson and Bridges bump into each other, that's potentially an easy dunk with 5 seconds left.
It is, yeah, but they didn't even look. This is we're looking for. We want it in Simon's hands, and that's where it's relevant in fantasy because obviously Simons is at the top when they look at who do we want the ball, who do we want handling the ball, who's our go-to guy. It's not Kamara, it's Simons. So. Obviously, we know Simons is an elite sort of guy, and he's right at the top of their pecking order. But in another situation with a team where you've got 2 guys and you're not really sure how they're viewed, you could watch something like this and go, they're running this play for this player. We know how they view him compared to someone else potentially. So, I love that stuff. Like I have a friend who's a coach, and he was my coach growing up, and we're good friends. And when I go and have lunch with him, which is, I don't know, somewhat regular, that's exactly what we talk about. We watch a lot of college basketball, and he doesn't like the NBA because he's very old school, and he prefers the NBA from 20, 30 years ago when we grew up playing. And so he likes a lot of the stuff he runs with his teams now is based on watching college basketball, not NBA.
Do you watch universities there, or do you watch NCAA college basketball?
Yeah, college basketball isn't a thing here.
Really? Okay.
So, I'm sure it exists, but it's nothing like the US.
Do you watch or follow the Australian League?
Just the National League? Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
Do you recognize the name Brian Vokel?
No.
He was a good friend of mine growing up, and he played in the Australian League for I think he might be an inbound Hall of Famer. He was averaging double-doubles and triple-doubles in the Australian League.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look him up and have a look. But yes, no, I watched two of the local, National League here. I watched 2 games last night. We've got some good young players. Obviously, LaMelo Ball came through the NBL. Jayshawn Tate came through the NBL. So there's more and more guys. Josh Giddey came from the NBL. He's obviously Australian, so a little bit different. And then we've got guys playing here now who have been Matthew Dellavedova is still playing here. Aaron Baines. Oh, wow. So guys that have Jock Landale was here last year, I want to say, maybe the year before. So certainly growing in terms of popularity and where it sits, I think, globally. It's viewed as a much stronger league than it was even 5 to 10 years ago. So,
well, if we want to get one of the players on the show, I could probably make that happen. He plays for the team Perth. Perth R is what I see right here.
Okay. Perth are good.
Yeah?
Yeah. They've been probably a top 14 for the last 25 years. They're always good, Perth.
Well, he's getting 37 minutes a night last season for them.
Okay. So maybe he play. How do you spell his name?
Voelkel. Vokel is how you pronounce it.
Voelkel.
El.
There it is. Oh, yep.
Yeah, we'll bring him on the show one of these days.
Perth R. Who is Perth R? Because Perth R is not... So the Perth team here that plays in the National League is the Perth Wildcats. So I'm wondering who Perth R.
Is it the Perth Redbacks?
Okay, so they might be. It might be the next level down. Anyway, I'll have a look. That's not something to look at on the show, but interesting.
56 minutes, and if you guys are still here hanging out with us, we appreciate you.
Yeah. So yeah, that will do. We've left you about half an hour to go and make some ads and streams and have a look at who's available on your waiver wire. I know you've got your 2 shows now per week. Let people know about what's happening on your shows.
Yeah, on Sundays or Mondays, I'll go live. Trying to figure it'll be Sundays after football, but maybe during football it still might be Mondays. But once a week, we're going to be doing episodes of Check Ball on the stream on my show, The Advantage. Last week we talked about Spoelstra's extension, some of the other coach rants, Bronny James and LeBron being on a signed basketball card together, and how much would you pay for that? So we just have some fun general NBA discussions. They are not fantasy based. They are not betting based. And then on Wednesdays on the stream, I always do a betting breakdown. So of course, I'll talk about every game happening on those high volume Wednesday nights and break down all the best betting angles and where my money is on those games. We have been absolutely dominating. Adam, this has been by far my best season so far, record-wise. There's been a lot of great seasons. This one is the best. So I suggest anyone listening to tune into those streams because we can watch our money make money in the NBA.
Yep, that's what we want to do. I've got obviously this show, which will be every Friday evening, afternoon now. My Thursday show, which airs live here in Australia at about 8 p.m., which is like 4 a.m. Eastern in the States. So we had a lot of people watching, though, the other night. That's me along with Matty G from Insight Fantasy Sports. And then we have a sort of a rotating third guest. And we have a couple of beers and just chat about some hypothetical trades. And we have another guest, obviously, on the show, your dog, LeBron.
She's crying. She's like, "Are you done yet?" I'm like, "All right, yeah, we're finally done."
Yeah, we're done. And then I'll be starting a NBA Monday show as well. So this week, I think I've got possibly Rhett Bauer coming on. Alex Reclean is going to be
coming on.
Yeah. Noah Rubin's going to be coming on. So I'll just be cycling through some guests, probably Kayla Fonte as well, who I had on my show last week. I'll get her on again. So, yeah, that'll be a show that we do live before the games tip off on the Monday, just to have a look at what's coming up for the next 7 days. Fun times at FBI. Yep. All right. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to let you go and walk your dog. I'm going to finish eating my breakfast. Remember to check out all of our content, YouTube, on Twitter, apparently, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Thumbs up, subscribe, everything. We would love that. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.